And we are back here at 7:07 a.m. and on line one is Jodey Arrington, Congressman Jodey Arrington. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, guys. God bless West Texas.
Absolutely. How are things in D.C. today?
They're just as swampy as ever. You know, it's almost reached a solid state.
Well, of course, I was just one of the. I guess the big question is, other than dealing with this so-called impeachment, and I'll air quote that, is there any legislation getting? Is there anything else productive happening in Washington D.C.?
Well, there's not enough happening. There's a lot of problems to tackle. We have the opportunity on the trade front, and I think it will pass. I'm talking about USMCA. We're going to hopefully get some good news on China, but that's all driven by our president. And I think Nancy Pelosi is only going to allow USMCA to go through because she can't afford to have nothing to show for their time with the gavel. And then I worked on some drug pricing legislation, bipartisan legislation that passed the House to provide transparency and give seniors tools that will actually drive the cost of prescription drugs down for seniors. Now, that's not getting a lot of attention, but I'm also trying to find ways to be productive while this impeachment sham is ensuing.
Well, that's getting no publicity. I was unaware of any of that. I mean, the only thing that the media seems to be oppressed with is this impeachment, bizarre impeachment deal. And I tell you, I'm actually becoming I think like the majority of American citizens. I just can't hardly stand to watch it because it makes your eyes glaze over, for one thing. Tell us, can you simplify it for us and tell us what's going on there?
Well, I just want to remind folks that this was a process, and it's nothing like any impeachment procedure we've had in the past for other presidents, Republican and Democrat. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason that I refer to this as a political stunt, as a sham. Pelosi initiated this without even reading the transcript, which is the only direct evidence and firsthand information with regard to the President Trump's conversation with President Zelensky. Adam Schiff he and his staff coordinated with the whistleblower from the outset, and neither one of them want to testify. And the allegations initially by the Democrats were quid pro quo, quid pro quo. There was no quid pro quo, and so they've moved on to now bribery, so they're changing the allegations and moving the goalpost. It's second and third hand hearsay when we have the direct evidence. We've got the president's the only one that's fully disclosed the information that can solve the puzzle here, which is a conversation about draining the swamp, rooting out corruption, and making sure no stone is left unturned, including politicians in this country who should not get a pass in that regard. And, of course, I'm referring to Vice President Biden and his son, Hunter. Yeah. So those are the things that I want folks to understand. This is not a legitimate impeachment proceeding. It is not credible for the reasons I just stated. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what is very obvious is here we have Hunter Biden, and that deal, anybody with a brain knows that what he did, it stinks to high heaven. And yet they have no interest in that. It's only Trump in the phone call. It's just amazing.
That's it, Dave. I mean, if you ask the American people, you went through the scenario of Hunter Biden getting paid $50,000 a month, starting this job on the board of this energy company that was being investigated. At the same time, his dad, Vice President Biden, was the point person on Ukraine. And then Vice President Biden goes around bragging about how he called off the investigation of a company on which his son served as a board member. If you present that to the American people and say, does that stink to you? Do you think we ought to look at that? Call it an investigation, call it what you will. Do you think we ought to investigate whether there was corruption there? Because there's certainly perception. Everybody with a modicum of good judgment and impartiality, they weren't just political hacks, would say, absolutely. Well, once you say that stinks and it ought to be looked at, then you have to agree with the president. When you're trying to root out corruption, President Zelensky, don't forget to turn this stone over and look at it because it stinks to the high heavens.
And what's funny about it, Congressman, is if you ask that question, I mean, you saw the NBC guy, the Meet the Press guy. His name escapes me now. He just went ballistic when he asked that question. Well, Hunter Biden's already been. He's already been researched about. That's all been. Well, it hadn't. I mean, they asked, was there any problem with that to the Bidens, and they said, oh no. Well, there you go. That's the answer. It's absolutely amazing.
Listen, your listeners and folks in West Texas, because West Texans are just good, common sense folk with good judgment, they see right through this as political BS, and they know that this president has been under the gun of impeachment from the day he was sworn into office, which is why we went through the first round of this, which was the collusion, Russia collusion, spent 2 years, $30 million of taxpayer money, and we got nothing. And then they tried to move to obstruction, just like they're trying to move the targets here. They just are obsessed with this president, and they're gonna pay a price at the ballot box, because I think the folks in the middle who really make the decisions on the presidency will not tolerate this do-nothing Democratic led House.
Okay.
This nonsense.
Congressman, we got to take a break. Please hold on, and we'll be right back with more. If you have questions for Congressman Jodey Arrington, our text lines are open this morning at 806-680-2790. Quick break, and we'll return.
We're speaking to Congressman Arrington on line one. Congressman, I do have a quick question for you. Why Adam Schiff? I mean, he seems like the slimiest guy that they could have possibly picked to lead this investigation.
Well, he's certainly the least credible of all of the prospects to lead it. Number one, it ought to be led out of judiciary. That's how every impeachment has been managed.
And Congressman, I think, I mean, not to, I think Nadler just screwed up the whole Mueller questioning, and they would put him in the doghouse. That's my opinion.
Well, they don't.
On that.
That's right. Well, they don't have a whole lot to choose from. The bench isn't very deep, but you've got this guy Schiff, who was saying that he had evidence of Russian collusion, and so from the outset.
Well, and don't forget him in that phone call with the guy from Russia, the radio guy. I mean, that just makes him look completely biased and uncredible.
Yeah, listen. If I had to choose somebody to make my case that this is an illegitimate process and it's purely political, I would choose Adam Schiff, because he oozes that sort of political hack job that is being done on our president. And so, yeah, I don't know why they would stick with a guy like that, but it certainly doesn't hurt my side of the argument.
Yeah. Congressman, as we move forward, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is they're flat out not even letting the Republicans speak. They're not letting them ask certain questions. They're definitely not letting them get anyone on the witness stand. Have you? I mean, do you think the American people are even going for this?
No, and I think the longer it goes on, the less people will have patience for it. And the Republicans, in the past, as you know, and your listeners know, it was run impartially, unbiased. The minority had the same rights the majority had in terms of questions and calling witnesses. The president had his counsel. So this is completely a break from precedents, and the reason is they don't want the evidence. They're not looking for facts. They're not about truth and justice. You know exactly what they're about. They're about fear and hate, as I've said before. They hate this president and his agenda, and they are afraid he's going to be the president for 4 more years after 2020. And I think they're right, and quite frankly, I think they're playing right into that.
So, Congressman, Nancy Pelosi, now, she normally seems like a fairly level-headed person, but it seems like she's gone all in on this impeachment thing, and I'm not sure that it's what she ended up wanting to do, but she came out and said that that Trump has every opportunity to present his case. In fact, he could come in front of the committee anytime he wanted to and tell the truth.
Nancy Pelosi is a shrewd politician. I will tell you that she knows what a loser this process is, but she has no leverage as Speaker. She sold her soul basically to get the speakership, and she's being controlled by the far left. And so she's just feeding the frenzy of the far left. And but I know she's smarter than this. So she's trying to maximize the damage or minimize the damage, and maximize the discrediting of our president. But in the end, I think Pelosi knows that this is a loser for her and her party, especially in 2020. But worst of all, as an American, this will damage our institutions, our presidency already. I've had conversations with President Trump directly where I can tell you he is not able to have the candid conversations with foreign leaders that he's had prior to this. And I think that'll bleed over into the next president, whether it's Democrat or Republican. It's bad for the United States of America.
Let me ask you this, Congressman. Has this gone too far now for them to come up and say, and not have an impeachment vote?
Absolutely. They have to take the vote. They
will impeach him, won't they?
They will impeach him. He'll be acquitted in the Senate, obviously. One thing about that vote, just going back to your earlier question, Dave, about can we get anything done, this is, in a very perverse way, this is also going to force the Democrats to tee up USMCA because they're going to need to give their moderate members something to go back home to the districts and explain that they've accomplished while they've been in power.
Yeah, that's the trade agreement between Mexico and the U.S.
That's right.
And Canada, I guess.
So, Congressman, I think that could only help our economy, and they're kind of betting on a downturn in the economy now.
So that's why they're in a box, okay? Because we know that trade agreement is going to bring. But this is the International Trade Commission is not a political organization, and it's projected 170,000 new jobs, $70 billion to the economy. It's huge for Texas. It's really big for agriculture and energy. But yeah, it's going to just give greater certainty to the marketplace, to the markets. And it's going to be another boon to our economy. And President Trump is going to get all the credit for it, as he should, because he's been driving this along with Republicans on my committee, Ways and Means, who've been pushing this for months now. So,
Congressman, real quick, one other thing. I don't know if you've seen much about this, but apparently Russian troops took over a command base that we had in northern Syria. What kind of issues do you see with that? And do you think Donald Trump made a mistake pulling those troops out of Syria a little early?
Yeah, listen, I support this president and his agenda because it's my agenda, and he's doing a great job. But that doesn't mean I'm going to agree with him on every issue. And in this is one case where I think he made the wrong decision. I think it was premature. His motives are right. We don't want endless wars. We don't want to put at risk a single soldier more than we have to for any longer than we have to. But in this case, we've got to keep the pressure on ISIS. We can't have another resurgence. There's some important channels of supply to Hezbollah from Iran that we have to protect, and then the oil field. There's a series of things that are strategically important to the United States, and we needed to work out a deal with Turkey, but not withdraw and give Turkey a pass to come in and wreak havoc on our allies, the Kurds. So, yes, I thought it was a mistake. I think he's doing the right thing to patch it up, and I opposed him publicly, and I even passed legislation and supported legislation that opposed him.
Okay. Well, Congressman, we got about 20 seconds left. Is there anything you'd like to quickly say?
Well, I just want the folks back home to know that while this political drama is going on, I've been working to pass legislation to bring drug prices down and keep pushing on fair trade deals and things that are going to help our economy.
Congressman, we're up against the clock. Hey, bud, thanks so much for calling.